All right, hey there. Welcome back to Coding at Home with the Code Hub. Hey, we're going to be talking about types for the third day in a row. This is a pretty big one. The reason why we're talking about it so much is because it's a huge topic. It's something brand new that we haven't touched on before, and it pays to practice, as with any of this stuff. And I'm not saying I don't trust that you're not practicing at home after these sessions, but I don't trust you. There's other stuff to do, of course, around the house that I'm sure you're being made to do lots of chores. So this is really a chance for us to go back in, keep working with types, really look at it from a bunch of different angles to figure out how do I use these? How would I use these as a coder? And why would I use these? And to make it a bit interesting. And to help sort of tailor some of this content to you guys, what I did was I threw together this survey up here. I keep pointing to the wrong side. If you go to the codehub.ie/surveys, there's a new survey out about coding at home. It's about 6 questions, totally anonymous. So if you want to write in and tell us a little bit about yourself, about your setup, I'd love to know if I need to produce more content to show you guys how to take this course, if I need to show more content about particular features of the language, anything that we're missing. Anyway, I really appreciate the feedback, and hopefully that will help us all learn how to code a bit better. All right, so today, like I said yesterday, we went into instances and we looked at turtle graphics. We looked at a blank playground to see how to create a dog type and then create instances of that dog. What we're going to do today is we're going to go take a look at the book. So let's jump over to the iPad and we'll walk through some new exercises. All right, so on the iPad, we're going to jump into the book. So it's Everyone Can Code Puzzles. So I'm on types and initialization. This was explaining a little bit about how to use different types to solve a puzzle. But now we're going to look at this particular page here, this apply page. So we're imagining that we work for a software company and we're trying to build a brain exercise game. Now you can do that. You can imagine we're working to build a brain exercise game, or maybe we're building an art game and we're still just exercising the use of types and instances. So we're going to download a new playground today that we haven't played with before called the Shapes Playground. So let's go off to Swift Playgrounds and grab that. All right, so to grab shapes, I'm going to go down here to see all. I can see they're all my familiar playgrounds. This is in one of the starting point playgrounds right here. So I'm going to hit get. And what we'll do at the end of this, we'll kind of play with the Shapes Playground for a while today. And then at the end, we'll go back to Learn to Code 2 very briefly and talk about some of the playground pages that are worth doing as exercises to really make sure that you understand how types, instances, and initializers work. And then we're probably going to be moving on tomorrow to the next chapter, chapter 7 in the book. All right, so Shapes is downloaded, so I'm going to go tap on my newly downloaded playground. Okay, so this is a bit like our blank playground that we used yesterday. It's pretty basic. Now there's a bit more built into it than we had with our blank playground. But let's run this code and see what it does. If I read it before I run it, I can see that I've got a variable here called a circle. I assign it to an instance of my circle type, right? Because this is how I get an instance of my circle type. Circles, you know it's a type because it's got a capital C. I've got the 2 parentheses, so that'll give me the default version of a circle. And then what I do here is I set a property on the circle, which is draggable, to true. So let's run our code and see what happens. Okay, cool, not bad. We've got a circle. I can tap on it and move it around if I want. and drop it places. That's not bad. If we go back to the book for a second, so I exit out of that, I open up books. We can see that, so we've done this part, open the shape starting point. We're using shapes with different colors to help people with their hand-eye coordination is the goal. So let's try to follow along with the book at this stage. And then we're going to write instructions that will guide medical staff in using your program with the patients. So let's see. One of the challenges, if we read up here the description here, maybe the challenge will be to move a blue circle to the top left of the screen, then move a green rectangle to the bottom right of the screen. So let's try that. So we have our blue circle. If I exit out of here, back to Swift Playgrounds, we have our blue circle. And what did we say? Upper left, I'm going to double tap on the home button and then tap on books down here. Blue circle to the top left, green rectangle to the bottom right. Okay, double tap on the home button again. Back to Playgrounds. All right, top left. Now I need to create a rectangle. So I can see from the autocomplete bar that I have a bunch of things available to me here. And I can see at the very end of the autocomplete bar that I have an image, a line, a point, a rectangle, shadow, shape, size, text. Those all have capital letters. So we can make a pretty confident guess that these are all going to be different types. We also have circle, canvas, color. And then the rest of these look like functions because they start with lowercase a's there. So let's create a new variable called rectangle, because that's what we need to put in the bottom right corner. So var, we're going to call it rectangle. And now for our value, we want an instance of our type rectangle. So I'm going to go down to the autocomplete bar and drag all the way over to the end. And there I can see I've got a rectangle option. Now once I've tapped that rectangle type, now it gives me an option of putting a dot down or a parentheses. Now we want to initialize a rectangle, so we do that with these open and close parentheses. So all right, let's try running that and see what we have. Okay, we have a rectangle. Now if I tap on the rectangle, you'll note that it doesn't move. So how do we fix that? Well, we can tap on this little inspector here and see that, oh, it's got a width of 10 and a height of 10. So in addition to being a rectangle, it's also a square. Let's change one property on our rectangle. So now that we've defined our variable rectangle, we can say, okay, cool, rectangle dot, because we're using dot notation that we learned yesterday and the day before. And we can set all these properties on it. Corner radius is kind of a fun one to play around with that we'll do in a second. Playground description self we'll ignore for now. Size, border color, border width. We want to set this draggable property to true. So let's try running that now. Okay, now if I go tap on this rectangle, ooh, I can see that it rotates when I tap on it. And I can drag it to the bottom right. Now I can also see that there was a circle behind my rectangle the whole time, and I can drag that to the top left. Now I'm close, but I need to change the color of my rectangle. Now the circle was supposed to be blue in the top left corner, but I want to change my rectangle color to green, right? If we go back to if we double click on the home button, we go to books, we can look up here in the directions and say, all right, well, move blue circle to the top left, green rectangle to the bottom right of the screen. All right, so let's double tap the home button again. And if you miss and you just tap it once, you can always just go open up Swift Playgrounds from here. So let's try seeing if there's a color property on our rectangle shape. Rectangle dot. Now there's a border color, then a border width, and there's a color property there. So we're going to say color equals Now we have a couple options. We could initialize a color, because color is another type. And when we start using more and more playgrounds, we'll find that types are everywhere in Swift. It's what's called a strongly typed language. Now, you can go and say that to some university professor, and you're going to look like a genius. And they're going to say, wow, come teach our Swift course. But really, all that means is that it tries to help prevent common errors by making sure you know what it is, what code you're writing, and the objects that you're using are what they say they are. But we don't have to initialize a color. We're going to tap on this little swatch down here. And this makes it way easier for us to pick a color. So let's pick a color green. Let's try running our code. Okay, so maybe in the example in the book where we say it's a brain exercise game, we would have a little bit of instructions here that would say move a circle, a blue circle to the top left, and move a green rectangle to the bottom right corner of the screen. Might be a good application to give to someone to test out their brain function. So maybe we would write the instructions down. We might put it on the screen. Let's see if we have a text object that we could draw on the screen. So let's create a new variable. And we'll call, instead of just calling this text, because text isn't super descriptive, we're going to call it instructions. Now, if we drag on the autocomplete bar way over to the right, we can see that we have a text option. So let's hit text. This is a type, a text. So we're going to hit the parentheses button. Now we have a few different ways to initialize our text. So I'm going to use the simplest one here where I just give it a string. So I've added a string. I'm going to bring up the keyboard. And then, so for my string, I need the quotation marks. So I'm going to hit shift. I'm not going to hit shift. I'm going to hit this 1, 2, 3 button. I'm going to go hit my quotation marks. And I'm going to type in my instructions here. So I'm going to say drag the circle to the upper right, and then here we'll put in a period, and then drag the rectangle to the bottom right. And I should probably change the instructions so that it's right and not. So here, let's go back here. And instead of right, I want left, of course. So now I'm going to tap my finger down here. At the very end, I'm going to delete that last parentheses. I'm going to hit the 1, 2, 3 button. I'm going to go hit the quotation mark. And now I need to remember to close this parentheses off, right? So if I bring down my keyboard, I'll see that I've got a few errors here. I need a matching parentheses, is what it's telling me. So, okay, let's go add that. I can tap on the J and drag down to the left. All right, let's hit run my code. Okay, maybe doesn't look great, but tell you what, let's tap on the middle bar and drag it over to the left. We'll hit stop and we'll hit run my code again. Now you see, as we're playing around with this playground, we can kind of see how things get drawn onto the screen. So the circle was our first thing that we added, a variable for a circle. That's nowhere to be seen because the rectangle is on top of it. And then the text is drawn on top of the rectangle. And that was done last. So you can see that the things at the top of the screen, as Swift reads down through that file, it's going to add them to the screen, and then other things get added on top of them. So I'm going to tap on my rectangle, move it to the bottom right, tap on the circle, move it to the top left. Done. That's all right for brain games. That's not too bad. Now, there are a lot of things that I could think of doing with these shapes and initializers. And in fact, later for homework, if you want, there's other things you can play around with. There's create, touch, and animate. But let's change from our application that we're building through Everyone Can Code Puzzles. Let's just draw a picture with these shapes. So I want to play around with, let's see, what else do I have? I have var, we'll call it other shape because I'm not sure what kind of shape it'll be yet. We'll go back down to the autocomplete bar and we'll drag over and let's see, let's add so we have a rectangle, we have a circle. Well, let's add maybe a line. Let's add a line. And we'll just use the default. So this where we have nothing in between is called the default initializer. And what we're going to get into tomorrow is a little bit more about parameters inside functions. And that's what these things are. So when we have this start point, end point, and then thickness here even, those are things that we can pass into our functions and our initializers that can change the behavior of how that code gets run. But that's something for tomorrow. So all right, so I have a line. So if I run my code, I'll see that I have my circle, my rectangle, and my line. Now I can't drag the line because I haven't set the draggable property on it yet. So let's do that. So we'll actually rename this from other shape to line. You see I have an option if I tap on it to rename. So I'll rename it. I'll call it line. We'll go down here. We have a circle, line, rectangle variables we can choose from. So we'll hit line dot draggable. Forgot what I was doing there for a second. All excited about adding borders to true. Okay, now if we run our code, we've got our line, we've got our rectangle, and we've got our circle. All right, so let's play around with that a little bit more though. Let's set the line to red. So remember, we can kind of drag through here and find some properties. So let's say color equals, we'll use this guy and we'll say red. Well, that kind of color. Let's see, will we set some of the other properties here? Maybe we'll add a border to our rectangle. So we'll add a border width equals, and then it tells me it's looking for a double. Now we talked about double a couple weeks ago when we were talking about variables. A double is just a decimal number. So it's like 1.0 or 2.3. So let's say, let's add a border width of 3. You can pick your own width here. And let's try running our code and see what happens. Okay, cool. We have our kind of maroonish line here. We have our green rectangle, but it hasn't got a very distinctive border. Move our line out of the way. We can move our circle out of the way. Maybe we need to give it a better color than that. Let's go back to the rectangle. And now I don't have to do this here. I don't have to group all of my rectangle property changing here. I could actually do it down here. Well, maybe I think of it later. I say rectangle dot border color equals, let's pick the color swatch and do maybe this blue. Now, the one place I can't put it, so I've defined my variable here. The one place I can't do things like this is up here. I can't say rectangle dot, what do we try to define? Draggable, where's the equal sign? We look for the equal sign is just down here in the D. So we tap on D and drag down, equals true. So now if we try to run this code, we have an error saying use of unresolved identifier rectangle, which might be confusing because if we look down here, it's right here. But the way Swift is going to read this file is from top to bottom. So by the time it gets here, it knows about this circle shape and type. It knows that it has these properties on it. But it doesn't know anything about rectangle yet because we don't define it till down there. So let's delete that stuff and try running our code. Remember, we've added the border color. Okay, all right, that rectangle's looking a little cooler. Now, I personally like kind of softer edged rectangles, so let's add a corner radius. So the property that monkeys with is the edges here. So we're going to say equals, and this is another double. You can see the type there that it's looking for. So we can say maybe 5.2. Let's try that out. Okay, all right, maybe we've given it too much of a corner radius. Let's change that number. And instead of 5, we'll give it a 2 corner radius. Now, you'll notice that Swift is smart enough, even though I didn't put a .0 there, Swift is smart enough to know that because this corner radius expects a decimal number, it knows that, okay, I can turn 2 into a decimal number of 2.0. Okay, that's looking a little better. That almost looks like an app icon. Okay, cool. In fact, I wonder, could we start building an app icon in this application? Let's keep monkeying with this rectangle. Let's go rectangle. We are going to go play with the, let's see. We'll scroll past all of these things. We could change the rotation. Let's go back and change the drop shadow. And now the really nice thing about this is that we can use this autocomplete bar to discover a lot about our code that we're working with. So this rectangle type has a lot of different properties on it, as we can see. It has this drop shadow property, and it's looking for a shadow with a question mark. Now we'll get into the question mark in a future topic. But for now, we're going to give it a shadow. So let's go find our shadow type in the autocomplete bar. Say shadow. I've got the option to pick the parentheses, so I'm going to pick those. And let's run our code. Okay, so we can see now that there's a bit of a shadow underneath the rectangle. It makes it look like it pops out of the screen a little bit more. The circle doesn't have that same thing. And neither does the line. In fact, let's change the thickness of the line so it's easier to grab. So line dot thickness equals, and this is again looking for a double, so let's make this a pretty thick line and hit run my code. Oh nice, way better, much easier to grab. There's our rectangle and there's our circle. Now you can see once I tap on them, that item becomes the foremost on the screen. So when I tap on the line, it'll show up above all the others. All right, so let's see. So we've got maybe a kind of funky looking person there. Do we need to draw a nose? Will we draw a bit of hair? Well, we could do something like this. We could create a bunch of lines in a for loop. That might be something fun to play around with. Let's see, one other thing we wanted to play with though. Let's try changing the size. So if we say rectangle, we'll make the rectangle a bit bigger. Size equals. Now it's looking for a size type. Luckily that shows up. That's one of the first things that shows up. So I'm going to say size. I'm going to hit the open parentheses there. And then it gives me this option here, width double, height double. All right, so if I tap on that, this is going to lead nicely into tomorrow's lesson. I'm going to change the width maybe to 40. I'm going to change the height to, because it's a rectangle, it doesn't have to be a square. I'm going to change the height to 30, and let's run that code. Okay. That's cool. We've got a much bigger rectangle now. So this is, you can see that I've been playing primarily with the rectangle at this point. You know, maybe I could do something more with the dot. Maybe I could add some more. Let's add a few more lines. Now I want to make sure that the lines are all kind of created the same way. So in my loop here, or actually, do you know what? If I want to make it all appear the same way, let's create a new function that's going to give us, that's going to draw lines on the screen. So we're going to say func here, and we're going to give it a name of make line. I might say make draggable line because I'd like to be able to drag them so I can get them all out of the way. So let's do var line equals, we'll go way over here and find the line autocomplete. Now remember to use the one with the capital L because we're trying to create a line type. So use our parentheses. We'll make our line draggable. And what else will we do? We make it, I think that's good. Maybe we can make it, let's make it, give it a certain color. Color equals, and we'll pick the color swatch, and we'll do yellow. So now, if I run my code, of course, this is going to do nothing because I haven't called make line yet. I've just made a function that will, if I call it, make a line. So let's try calling it just once. I'll bring up the keyboard and I'll start typing in make line, and I'll run my code. Okay, there's my green rectangle, my yellow line, my old line, and then my blue circle. Actually, I kind of am starting to make a face. I could maybe make this yellow line the hair. So what I'd love to see you do is use this playground, this canvas in particular, and try to draw me a shape. Try to draw me a face with hair. Try to draw, now we remember Dylan drew a person holding a lollipop yesterday with turtle graphics. This is a little bit different because we're working with specific types for the drawn elements. But try to make a shape of your own. And then if you could post it somewhere, that would be great. If you can't for whatever reason, that's fine. Just maybe shoot me a note and tell me about it. If we do take picture, we'll that's a way to capture your amazing artistic efforts in Swift Playgrounds. I'd love to see what you can do with types and instances. Remember, like what we'll do here. In fact, before we go, we'll almost create this like a second eye. So we'll say circle 1 equals, if we start typing in circle, we'll have our circle type show up, so we can initialize 1. We'll make sure it's draggable. And circle 1 I want to make draggable too, because circle is already draggable. So let's try running this guy. Okay, so there's our one circle. Here's our second circle. There's our hair. There's our mouth. Let's drag this. Actually, let's drag this guy over here. A little tricky because I don't want to hide stuff behind things. I've just drawn a frog with yellow hair. That's not bad. And how I've done that is I have my first circle instance. So it circles my type. I can see that I've got my second circle instance, circle 1, and I set that to draggable. I have a rectangle instance of a rectangle type, and I set all these properties on it: draggable, color, border width. I even went down here and changed the border color, corner radius, and the drop shadow, and the size. I also created an instance of a line type, and I made it draggable. I changed the color, I changed the thickness. And then to sort of practice our function making, we created a function called makeLine. So now we could call this a number of times, this makeLine function, and we'll have a bunch of lines that are all yellow, all draggable, added to our canvas. This is useful, especially when I start typing in things like my variable.draggable equals true every single time. I might want to create a function of my own that makes it easier to create those instances of types. So this was another big practice day. This was pretty in-depth. If you hadn't done the previous types and initializers exercises, I highly recommend going back to them. If we close out of this playground and we open up Learn to Code 2, I would highly recommend you go back through the introduction to initialization here. Try out the Initializing Your Expert playground. Use instances of different types. Now, we didn't do it today, but if you want to practice, the It Takes Two playground page is really good because we have to solve this puzzle using two different characters, our expert and our character. So Bite or Hopper or whoever is going to be the one who actually goes and collects the gem. And your expert is going to be needed here to go unlock the locks, or to turn the locks up or down, because you can see we have one platform that's up high and another platform that's down low. So this would be a great one to work on for homework. The introduction to types is very good. Deactivating a portal is very good. And then setting the right portal is another playground page you might want to practice on. In this particular exercise, you need to turn the blue portal and pink portal on or off, depending on where you are in the puzzle. So Bite can only go so far. If he goes forward here, he's going to pop out here, which may be what you want, and get that gem. But then he might not be able to get back around to collect anything else because this blue portal is still on. So you're going to want to set it to inactive, so by saying is active equals false, to allow him to go over this blue portal without getting stuck. And then the same thing, he'll need to get back to go through the pink portal to collect that gem, but at a certain point we'll need to turn the pink portal off as well. So those are a couple playground pages worth playing with. The Shapes Playground is a ton of fun. I would really love to see some exercises and some drawings. If anybody can come up with some good ones, feel free to drop me a line. And we'll see you tomorrow, where we start to move on to functions with parameters. All right, see ya.